Flirties, on the show today, we have Lisa Brateman, author of the book, What Are We Really Fighting About, to have a conversation with us about intimacy. Hello, Lisa.
Hi, Ben. Nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm very glad you are here today and grateful to have this conversation with you as I've made some posts recently on the socials and also been talking about this topic of intimacy and flirtations as well. So excited to have just this dialed in, focused conversation on intimacy. But first things first, if you could share a little bit more about yourself with the Flirties and your work.
I'm a psychotherapist in private practice. And one of the reasons why I wrote this book, What Are We Really Fighting About, is I see a lot of couples.
Hmm.
And intimacy is often what they come in to talk about. They ask about or they're worried about. We were so intimate, we were so connected, and now we're not. Or something has changed and they don't know what or why or how. And it's changed sometimes over a short period because something happened, or sometimes just slow and insidious.
Mm.
And they want to get that intimacy back.
Yeah. Yes, there's going to be a lot of parallels here between, I think, your work and this discussion we're having today, and also the flirt, as I talked about the flirt being all about connection. And it might be, I don't know, coming a little bit out of left field to think that the flirt can really be this tool for intimacy. But I think that's a big part of it is when you can just see someone for who they are, when you can just make that deeper connection, when you can allow yourself to be seen, and if you can establish some of that intimacy in this connection and in your relationship, regardless of if you're dating or in a long-term relationship, I think starting with intimacy then opens up the flirt to be this incredible tool, this experience, something to have a lot of fun with. Yeah.
It works both ways. There's
Mm,
the flirtation that turns into intimacy,
mm,
or in a sense of you're letting somebody in, even in the beginning flirting stages, you're letting someone in to see if this is somebody you want to have a further connection with.
yeah.
So even
Yeah.
doing it in a light, sort of playful, fun way is intimate. You don't do that with everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And so how would you let's ground us in this episode and just talk about what intimacy is. How would you define it? How might you describe it?
Intimacy is a feeling of closeness and connection in your
Mm,
interpersonal relationships. Yes, it is fundamentally, we think of intimacy we see in romantic relationships, but there's intimacy in a lot of relationships that we have. And
yeah.
that's really about letting someone see you
Okay.
and getting to know who you are. And there's four types of intimacy that we look at the most. And one is the emotional one, which is quite frankly the biggest
Yeah.
and the most important one, because that's where you let somebody know who you are. There's obviously the sexual and the physical one,
Hmm.
mental, and then even in our spiritual lives, there's a certain
Mm,
intimacy as well. So
yeah.
there's a lot of different fronts, and they're all kind of working at the same time, although they're not always all prominent at the same time.
Mm. Okay. Okay. And I'm curious now in your work, what you see as maybe the one or two top things people may struggle with in terms of developing intimacy. And then actually, let's just stick with that question for now. And then I have a follow-up, I think. But yes, sort of what maybe holds people back from making those more intimate connections.
I think fear is the
Mm,
cornerstone of what holds people back. Let's say they were vulnerable with a past in a past relationship and they felt that that vulnerability was weaponized against them.
mm,
I showed you who I was, and then when you were angry, you threw it back at me.
mm, mm,
And that would make, that's the old
yeah.
baggage thing. That would make me next time be more cautious
Yeah.
because I didn't ultimately, a past relationship, I felt unsafe.
Yeah.
So, intimacy, in order to have intimacy, you have to have
Yeah.
trust in yourself and trust in who's who you're letting in.
Hmm.
because who you really there's a lot of people we have in our lives and we trust them to different degrees depending on the relationship. But the intimate relationship, ultimately, you have to feel safe.
Yeah.
Because if you don't feel safe, you're not going to really let somebody know you in the ways where true intimacy exists.
Yeah. Yeah. And all right, we're going to stay here for a moment as I know the flirties are now asking themselves a couple questions as I am. And that is, how can I start to develop safety in a new connection? Let's say you're out there dating, you've been on one or two dates, or you're on the apps, you're looking to move towards that first date, or you're somewhere in the dating process, and you've been hurt in the past. How can you trust yourself, right? Maintain your boundaries, but still be open to having some intimacy.
I think it's important, especially early on in the relationship, is not to fill in the blanks on who you're
Ooh,
sitting across the table with,
mm,
because we have a checklist of who we want.
yeah,
They have to be this, and this. And guidelines are not, there's nothing wrong with having a guideline. But when you have a checklist
hmm,
and then you're looking at them and you say, oh, they're so attractive. So
mm,
they also must be a good person. Or they're so smart, they must also be this. I think one of the most important things is you're not going to trust somebody you just met,
yeah,
but you don't have to go in distrustful either.
mm,
So, and trust is earned over time. So you can't have trust on the first two dates. What you have to have on the first two dates is a willingness to get to know who's in front of you
yeah,
because of what they do or say, not because they said this, so it must mean this.
right,
We often fill in the blanks and then we wonder or disappointed. Oh, I thought because they said this, they were also this and this, but they didn't show you that.
right,
You colored in that picture for them.
mm, yeah. Yeah, and this is something I know I've done. A lot of the flirties listening have done. Oh my
Everyone has
gosh.
done.
Yes, and this is, I think, a part of the search for safety in a connection. Sort of, I've talked about on flirtations before. We're sort of in dating culture, wanting instant gratification. We're wanting all the answers right away. We just want to know maybe everything about this person or who they could be, their role in our lives, right? Is this going to work, right? What's happening? We want those answers, but a part of dating and developing intimacy is being able to, I think, trust yourself and just like be with it, start to open up and see, of course, how this other person, whoever you may be dating, is showing up for you too.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's about being present. Leave your um, notions of what it should be.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because the person is in front of you there and you can find out what you want to know, unlike but you can't find it all out in the first month or
Right.
even the first 2 months. And I think what happens is I think we're all so used to instant gratification. Well, I texted you, you haven't responded in 15 minutes. What's wrong?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we all have that. I think with social media and everything else, as wonderful it is, but it also has set ourselves up to needing or expecting instant gratification. And intimacy is not
Mm.
about instant gratification. Maybe sexual instant gratification, but not on the emotional front.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. I want to ask another question here. And so for the flirty that's dating and is thinking to themselves, is there a way to know that someone is trustworthy, that they may be a good partner for me, or at least like there's potential, right? I can start to let my guard down a little bit. Um, yeah, maybe a few things to look for.
I think one of the most important things to look for is does the other person ask you questions about yourself? A
Yeah.
lot of people go on dates thinking they have to sell themselves and they'll tell their date all of their achievements.
Hmm.
And,
Hmm.
it's like sometimes it could feel like an interview in a bad sales pitch. Are you having conversations? Are you both sharing things about each other? How do they answer a question? Sometimes your questions may be premature.
Yeah.
And not to be offended, well, they wouldn't answer that. They didn't answer that because they don't know you well enough.
Right. Right.
Or I think what's really important is the person in front of you is brand new and you have to treat it accordingly.
Hmm.
Like you wouldn't tell, even if it's not romantic, a new person you met every detail of your life the
Right.
first 3 times you meet them.
Right.
You can tell them a little, tell them something that's important to you, but not devastating if they share it with everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's little ways and see how they react. Are they interested in your answer? Are they waiting for you to finish so they could talk?
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
a, that's a that's a big one.
Yeah. In many ways, coming back to some of the basics, which can forget about, right? You're dating if you're having some nerves, some anxiety, if you're bringing some hurt and pain into the experience, maybe you aren't sure where to start. You're new to all of this. I think the key, thus far with intimacy that I'm really picking up on is just that feeling of closeness with somebody,
Mhm.
which may be, it can be equated with safety, but not necessarily right then and, right off the bat. That's not something that you're going to necessarily have right away, but closeness, vulnerability, starting to build that trust, know that this is something that's co-created in a connection and just giving yourself that patience. And I think just love that for yourself that, right, you're gonna be like you were okay before this date, before this relationship, and you're gonna be okay afterwards too. But I hope through this discussion that the flirties feel empowered and just confident to start to develop those deeper connections, to allow themselves to get close. I know it's not easy. You've got some fear, you've got like some questions. Come back, listen to this, pick up Lisa's book. This is all in many ways a practice too, but I really hope through this, yeah, through this episode and my work that people feel, yeah, the flirties just allow themselves to connect and then be curious, learn more about other people, about themselves. It's really, really powerful.
It's powerful, and when you think, what are the alternatives of not connecting? It's
Yeah.
more of the same feeling, out of sorts, out of touch on the
Yeah.
outside, and it's may feel emotionally safer, but mentally it's not.
Mm, yeah.
And it's there's I think what makes it difficult in the beginning is that people put too much weight on the first date.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
when the person isn't interesting or the person doesn't seem interested, it's like, well, I just wasted my time. Well,
Yeah.
you had to have lunch anyway.
Yeah. That's true. True. Yeah. You had to you had to get some fresh air. You had to grab some dinner, right? Something like that.
Yes. So I think sometimes if the first date, if it's not magical, I think sometimes people are waiting for that magical pit in your stomach. And
Hmm.
sometimes that does happen, but real mature love over time happens over time. It's not, if you're waiting for love at first sight, you're going to go on a lot of first dates.
Yeah. Yeah. That
So I
is
think
true.
the
Yes.
weight that people put on the date is too heavy a burden for a date to contain.
Yeah. I so agree. This is a theme that has come up on flirtations a few times now, just starting to detach from those expectations a little bit. It doesn't mean that you don't have them, right? That you don't have goals, that you don't want what you want, that you don't want the relationship. It just means that this person before you on a first date, just getting to know them for who they are, building this connection. How are you showing up, right? How are you feeling? And then taking it from there. It's like, yeah, so much of the dating content out there is like, right, if you're not getting X, Y, and Z treatment on the first date, right, like drop them, say goodbye, ghost, delete. And it's like, I think we got to bring a little bit of nuance to the dating process, not to excuse bad dating behavior or if you're on a first date and they ask you no questions, just are talking about themselves, maybe that's an opportunity for you to be like, you know what, I'm kind of nervous too. And maybe you connect over that. Maybe they are just oversharing, perhaps out of anxiety, which we've all
Yeah,
been
that
there. Oh my gosh.
absolutely, absolutely. So in those sort of situations, if you have the person across the table from you is talking a lot, not asking questions, I think since you're already there and you made the effort, you showed up,
Mm-hmm.
say something, share something about yourself, and see if they pick up on it. See if they'll ask, "Oh, that's interesting. How
Yeah,
did that happen?" Or where did that come from? See if once, even if they didn't ask a question, tell them something about yourself, and then see if they take it or they just kidnap the conversation back to themselves.
absolutely.
Like it's like give them an opening because they're nervous too.
Yeah, probably. And now, okay, I want to ask you from your work that you do with couples, how intimacy may start to break down in relationships. Because I know there's some flirties listening that are right. They're interested in the dating stuff, the dating content and topics, but they're fully in relationships. And so speaking to their experience as well, that maybe they're in super healthy relationships, everything's great, or maybe they're like, ooh, I'd love talk to me. Yeah.
What I think it's a matter of course, and it's just life gets busy. That
Mm,
the emphasis and the attention you put on the relationship initially kind of, you know, falls somewhere in the background at times. You don't feel as appreciated. You feel a little bit taken for granted.
hmm.
You don't feel quite as heard or the attention you want, and that will change. That will change over time depending on what's going on. But
Yeah.
what I think it's important is when you notice those things to kind of both of you or one of you step up and say, we always used to talk after this.
Ah.
Or I always look forward when we did this on Sundays, and all of a sudden, the last 4 Sundays we had separate activities. It's
Mm,
about it's about once you're in a groove to remember to make each other a priority or make time for each other, whether it's for a conversation or just sexual intimacy or just even spending time together on the couch and connecting.
yeah.
Because it's like, okay, I'm with this person. Now you're my person.
Mm, mm,
And then sometimes with that and the confidence of that, now you're out to conquer something else. And it's like, oh, I have this. I don't have to. It's not to say you have to put work into it because I hate using the word work in relationships.
mm, mm.
Relationships take effort and consciousness to
Yeah.
stay in tune.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's going to be really helpful. And now I want to ask you a little bit more. I mean, we've been talking to a lot of the content of your book, but the part of the title that I didn't read at the very beginning, the sort of the text under the title is how to transform conflicts into conversations. And so for the person listening in a relationship, and I think this is going to be really great for anyone dating as well, you start to voice a need, a concern, even an anxiety, something like that. And maybe you aren't seen or heard, or your words get misinterpreted, or you're having a hard time just communicating exactly what you want to say. So, how we can turn perhaps a lack of intimacy into a really meaningful conversation to have that connection.
When you bring something up that bothers you,
Hmm.
or you just don't understand, it's how you go about it that makes the difference between this being a fight or this being a
Mm,
conversation that leads to intimacy.
okay.
Because very often, often, not always, but often, what you think you're fighting about, you're not really fighting. You're not fighting about the hamper that's overflowing.
Ah.
You're
Mm,
fighting about, I feel like you're being ignored, or your feelings aren't being respected, or your needs aren't being met.
mm,
But instead, we talk about the laundry. Or fight about the laundry.
yeah.
But when you say something like, I instead of saying you always do this, which is an accusation,
Hmm.
criticism, and many people respond to anything that starts with you always, Ben, you. always do this,
Yes.
most
Yes.
likely your response is going to be defensive and say,
Yeah.
I don't always do this, but you do this. And then you're off and running into accusations that are not about Ben. I want you to
Absolutely.
think of me when you're doing this, or when you say that. My feeling, I feel hurt. Can you explain to me what you mean by that? Because I may be taking it the wrong way.
Mm,
So I think how to turn from conflict to conversation is first and foremost ask for clarification for the thing that struck you as unfair or critical.
yeah.
Because when you ask for more clarification, you don't go from 0 to 10.
Mm,
You go from two to
okay.
four back to two.
Okay. Okay. I want to one more question here before we conclude our conversation because I love this. I think you just gave the Flirties a lot of great language to use because just like yeah, if you were to come to me and say you always do this, I'm very much on my back foot. I think I'm kind of
Yeah.
I feel like I need to defend myself, especially if I feel like ooh, I don't agree or if maybe I feel like I'm showing up for this relationship, this connection and maybe my efforts aren't being seen or acknowledged. And so here we can go into this back and forth, what is now a fight, not a conversation, really reacting out of emotion, saying things that are hurtful and harmful. So I love coming coming at these conversations with those I statements and not what did you do? What did this person do? But how do you feel? And then always you can ask them like, do you kind of how do you feel? Or if you like, maybe do you understand me? So giving the flirties one or two more tools here just to have those conversations and turn perhaps a conflict into connection and into intimacy.
I'll give you one really good example
Okay.
in a dynamic. One person says, I hate the fact that you go out 4 times a week.
Mm,
Why are you always with A, B, or C? And why am I not involved? And you're coming across aggressive because you're hurt,
sure. Sure.
because you feel left out.
Hmm.
But if you joined that conversation saying, I noticed you've been going out a lot more lately. I really miss you.
Mm,
You're going to get a lot of you're going to open that conversation of both of your needs. Is this person going out a lot because they're uncomfortable at home or something happened that they didn't realize, but that's their response to it?
mm,
Is the person, and they won't be defensive because they're not being attacked, because I want to know what's on your mind. Is there something going on that I don't know about? Or
yeah.
I just miss that, consistent connection we had. It feels less and less, and I'm lonely.
Yeah.
You're not going to bark back at me if I tell you I miss you, because I'm telling you I value you
Mm,
and our time together.
mm, yeah. I'm gonna put that in my own flirt toolbox for use at some point when I have a relationship. And of course, there will be these conversations that might bring up some anxiety and some fear, some discomfort, but really, really important. And I think some great examples here just to help the flirties have these conversations, express how you're truly feeling, what you need, ultimately to develop those deeper connections and have that intimacy. I love it.
Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh. Lisa Brateman, thank you so, so much. The book, What Are We Really Fighting About? How to Transform Conflicts into Conversations, available everywhere. I'll make sure and have it linked in the show notes below. Um, yeah, if there's anything else you want to share here in the final moments, just thank you so much for being a part of the show today.
My pleasure. Thank you again.
Yes, of course.